somebody. We don't know. We haven't had it tested in a formal fashion where an accused gets to confront accusers and cross-examine the witnesses and evidence against them and produce their own witnesses through exercise of the court subpoena powers to rebut or offer contradictory or exculpating evidence on their own behalf.
Yeah. I don't know. Let me just take a listen and see what she's talking about.
We're going to take you now to Chappaqua, New York, where Hillary Clinton is speaking about her deposition with lawmakers earlier today. Let's take a listen.
As fully as I could, based on what I knew, and what I knew is what I said in my statement this morning. I never met Jeffrey Epstein, never had any connection or communication with him. I knew Ghislaine Maxwell casually as an acquaintance, but whatever they asked me, I did my very best to respond. It was disappointing that they refused to hold a public hearing, so I wouldn't have to be out here characterizing it for you. You could have seen it for yourself. We had asked for that. We think it would have been better for the committee and its efforts to gather whatever information they are seeking. We had a bit of a challenge in the beginning because we had agreed upon rules based on the fact it was going to be a closed hearing at their demand, and one of the members violated that rule, which was very upsetting because it suggested that they might violate other of our agreements. So we had to cease the hearing for a period of time until we could get assurances that no rules would be broken going forward, and we returned to answer questions repetitively, literally over and over again. I don't know how many times I had to say I did not know Jeffrey Epstein. I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices. So it's on the record numerous times. It then got, at the end, quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs and a series of questions about Pizzagate, one of the most vile, bogus conspiracy theories that was propagated on the internet that was serving as the basis of a member's questions to me. So I can only say that the best...
Let me just say this real quick. Pizzagate is real, you lying hoe.
Well, I have a question. How many times did you take the fifth?
Ooh.
See, they preserved her from having to have that exposure, and the media isn't asking her. Ma'am, please, ma'am, how many times, if any, did you take the fifth? Since you were a lawyer, you ought to know what that
I
means.
had came at the very end when, contrary to every other deposition they have taken, no Republican member asked any questions about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell to anyone else they have deposed. And in fact, the Republican members didn't even show up for the deposition of Les Wexner. And when I said that, I had to point out that the only questions that any Republican member asked of any of the people they deposed was of former Attorney General Bill Barr when Chairman Comer asked him about the allegations, in his view, about Russia's involvement in my election in 2016. So at the very end of this hearing, after I made that point, I want to commend Chairman Comer for raising a series of significant questions that I responded to about the nature of the investigation and the areas that I thought should be explored. So I appreciated that. I want to see the truth come out. So that was a reassuring way to end a very long, repetitive deposition.
Madam Secretary, you spoke in your opening remarks about how heartbroken you have been for the Epstein survivors as these files have come out. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you have processed and reacted to the fact that the former president, your husband, Bill Clinton, is referenced in the Epstein files numerous times, including in some photos featuring women? And how have you been personally preparing for the deposition that is coming tomorrow? Are you 100% confident that there isn't anything that the former president knows about Epstein's crimes?
This device saves me hours of work a week, but that's not the reason I love it so much. I don't try to remember.
I am, and I think the chronology of the connection that he had with Epstein ended several years before anything about Epstein's criminal activities came to light, and that he was charged and sadly given a sweetheart deal, which, as I said in my statement, had that not happened, perhaps his predatory behavior could have been stopped earlier. But I think it is fair to say that the vast majority of people who had contact with him before his criminal pleas in 2008 were like most people. They did not know what he was doing. And I think that that is exactly what my husband will testify to tomorrow.
Madam Secretary, can I ask?
So Bill Clinton is going to be testifying tomorrow.
Actually, I think the whole Epstein thing is a red herring for various and sundry reasons on both sides, serve to blow a smokescreen to obscure certain more important issues. I understand the child abuse aspect, the sexual abuse aspect, but there are some issues that, fundamentally involve whether those thermonuclear devices will be set off again in anger, or several thousand troops or hundreds of thousands of civilians will lose their lives with certain things that might occur. And this is a good way to distract attentions from the deficits in being able to handle such things that certain individuals and organizations are displaying. Now,
I wanted to show you a couple of minutes of Lex Wexner. I think he was the owner of like Victoria's Secret or something like that, little old man. He's probably perverted, telling what he was doing on the island. But this is his lawyer basically telling him to shut the fuck up because you're talking too much. So I just want to play this clip.
You mentioned your chief of staff. For the record, who is that?
His name is Bruce Saul, and I met him through an acquaintance.
Answer the question.
Okay.
It's going to help if you answer the question that he asks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We'll all get out of here a lot faster.
But as I look back at it, it was part of the con. So I never met Meyerwald.
Can I have 1 second? Because I think it will move this thing along a little faster. Go off telling, stalking, okay? Just answer the question.
Okay. I think I'm giving you a long answer, but to understand in context, because if I just say yes or no, you won't understand it. And I really want this whole group to understand it. And I never would have guessed I was being conned. Never, ever. The deceit was so subtle. Yes, I know.
Answer the question.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure we all appreciate the stories. We're just trying to answer the questions they actually want to be answered.
Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I hope it is. That's kind of a puny example, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done.
Thank you.
Did you catch that?
Yeah, I did.
He said, I will fucking kill you if you answer another question with more than 5 words, okay?
What the deal is Fifth Amendment considerations. But you watch Blacklist, right? You remember Raymond Reddington would tell these
I
stories?
never watched that show.
I
never watched the show.
Watch it sometimes. It's a tactic to spread confusion and also to allow you to take control of the narrative.
But his lawyer is basically saying the less you pay, the better. Stop giving them.
Yeah, it is. But you know what else you're doing? See, there's this thing called testimonial immunity, transactional immunity, et cetera, et cetera. And when you've got a Fifth Amendment situation where somebody has said to you, if you testify, we won't prosecute, then what tends to happen, and you have to be a very sophisticated criminal lawyer to realize this, is that the more your client says or testifies to, the greater his immunity and insulation from prosecution. And when you have a situation, and we saw that with that thing with what's the porn star's name that they tried to hook up with Trump when she got on the stand.
I forgot her name.
Yeah, that was an example of it, because testimonial immunity is if you say something and it leads to something that incriminates you, they can use it. But if you say that thing that it would lead to if you were brief, they can't use it. And plus, you set up a thing when you're in front of a legislative committee that protected Ollie North. He shot his mouth off, but because he was induced by congressional incentive to keep talking, even though he got convicted for the criminal charges, they got reversed because his Fifth Amendment rights were violated by the questioning, inducing responses that were not favorable to his Fifth Amendment rights. So that is something that does happen. I don't know what kind of deal may be involved here, but I mean, I'm not his lawyer. I'm not practicing law, but what usually happens is when you keep running your mouth off, you're trying to get testimonial immunity. The more you say, the less they can go after you on. In other words, if you just keep adding, and somebody said, did he leave anything out? Well, let's go back and check. Well, I don't think he did. So there's nothing they can go after you on. But if you don't understand that, what happens is you get too abrupt, the light bulb goes on. He didn't say anything about that, did he? No. But yeah, I know what he's talking about. Let's go after him for that. And now they have a lead into what you may have done that they can introduce against you. See, that's the consideration. So, I mean, it's cute. I'm assuming it's entertaining, but there are sophisticated methods and less sophisticated methods. And I have no idea which one is in play with this.
Should we go back to the Hillary?
By the way, ask me about Victoria's Secret and structure and express when we get off the air.
Oh, you don't want it to be in this segment?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, should we go back to the Hillary press conference?
You can.
Okay.
Madam
Secretary, do you believe this was a fair hearing, and do you still want to testify publicly, even though you gave this deposition?
Oh, I'm not going to do it again. They had a chance to do it in public, and I wish they had done it in public. And I think they're making the wrong decision, avoiding doing it in public. I thought it was very repetitive. I thought that They asked literally the same questions over and over again, which didn't seem to me to be very productive. And then, as I said toward the end, there were other questions that were totally off subject. So if they are going to fulfill their responsibilities to literally investigate the investigations, which is what they originally said was the scope of their work, I think they could have spent the day more productively.
Madam Secretary, can I ask? James Matthews from Sky News. Can I ask, why was Ghislaine Maxwell invited to your daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? She'd already been mentioned in a civil lawsuit by Virginia Giuffre before that. Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted before that.
She came as the +1, the guest of someone who was invited.
Madam Secretary,
thank you all.
Ma'am, please, ma'am, did you have occasion to take the Fifth Amendment? And if you did, how many times? I didn't hear that question. And by the way, it is sometimes interesting what happens when the questions are repetitive. Sometimes the witness makes slips. And an artful trial lawyer can get away with effectively repetitive questions if by doing what he's doing, he asks them in sufficiently different forms that he may trip the witness up. The idea of cross-examination, amongst other things, is to catch the witness in contradictory statements or inconsistent statements. Yeah. What I said was, I'm not practicing law, but maybe the lawyer was cutting his client off from getting what they call testimonial immunity. In other words, if you've been granted a limited immunity for cooperation and you testify, but you cut it short, if you, by what you did say, lead to something else, they can go after you for that. That's why we saw Stormy Daniels. We saw her yakking because she was trying to set up testimonial immunity by saying everything and anything she could think of so she didn't have any liability. And what was that? Well, the bottom line is what she was testifying to when she got paid off by former President Trump at the time. She was talking about extortion. If somebody pays you to keep you from embarrassing them, that's blackmail. It's a felony, even in New York. So what happens is it seems they offered her immunity from prosecution for blackmailing former President Donald Trump in return for her testimony. So in the process, she ran on and on and on, which was proper and appropriate under the circumstances. So she did not risk anybody coming back at a later time and saying, well, she didn't talk about this, but what she did say inferred that, so that would give us a chance to go after something we now have a clue about. So I don't know what the situation is with this guy, but same thing happened with Ollie North. They kept questioning him, and he kept doing what this guy was doing, adding a little flavor to it. And what wound up happening is they got a conviction. But the appellate courts properly set the conviction aside because his Fifth Amendment rights were violated by the form and extent of the questions that came to him from the legislative body, to wit, Congress. They were talking about the Iran-Contra thing and supplying arms, which was close to 5,000 Stinger missiles that Osama bin Laden was the intermediary for in the exchange between the missiles and the money. So, yeah, plausible deniability and all of that got brought up. He now does op-ed type presentations on media because he's got a fan base. He took a dive, so to speak.
Well, I'm curious to see what happens with the Bill Clinton disposition. Is it disposition? Disposition.
Deposition.
Deposition. And they should have had it.
Depose means to.
Depose.
Yes, deposition. You depose somebody, you ask them questions under oath, and the answers are admitted into evidence either upon agreement of both sides in a criminal prosecution or just pro forma in a civil action.
So what do you think Bill Clinton is going to say? Because he was all up in that island. And,
I have no idea. See, here's the thing. If you were doing what they claim Epstein was doing, his business was ingratiating himself to everybody he could. In other words, he's supposed to be a nice guy. He doesn't have to tell, nor would he be expected to tell just anybody and everybody what he was up to. He would be about the business of handing, slapping on the back and giving everybody a good time. So he's a good guy. So he stays in good favor with a lot of people that count. And meanwhile, those that are doing the nefarious things with him that he was charged with, well, they can go along quietly and everything is covered. But when it breaks and it all comes out, and then it starts, what do they call it? Hitting the fan. Yes, hits the fan.